Hey everybody, and welcome to this Google Hangout. We are going to wait just a couple minutes and give folks time to log in, so stay with us, and Sean and I will be back in a couple minutes to talk CES and Internet of Things and Risk. So stay tuned. Okay, we're back, and I want to welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to this, the latest Security Ledger Hangout. I am Paul Roberts, and we're here today with Sean Lorenz of LogMeIn's Xively division. And we're going to be talking about a couple things. We're going to be talking about the most recent Consumer Electronics Show, CES, which just wrapped up in Las Vegas. And we're going to be talking about how to design secure and resilient Internet of Things technologies. So CES just wrapped up. You probably saw a lot of stories in your news feed about a lot of the cool gadgets coming out of CES. The Internet of Things was a huge huge theme or topic in this year's show, and there's a lot of hype, expectation, anticipation of all the things that Internet of Things has to offer the world. Lost in that, I think, a little bit is the topic of how to design products that are quality products, that are secure, that are resilient, and that protect customers and users' privacy and security. We had a little bit of that at CES with the Federal Trade Commissioner giving a speech, and Sean and I are going to talk about that. But the bigger picture of how to kind of make products secure, make them quality in the way that we expect other products that we use, that all kind of gets lost in the mix. So that's what we're going to talk about, both about kind of rehash CES, what we think the big themes coming out of CES were, and then the larger topic of how do you make IoT products, Internet of Things products that are resilient, that are secure, and that both serve and protect customers who use them. With us today, and I'd like you all to welcome Sean Lorenz. Sean is a technical product manager at Xively, which is a division of LogMeIn. And Sean, welcome.
Thanks, Paul, for having me. We're really excited to talk with you, especially. You know, I've actually attended your security conference back, I think it was earlier this spring.
Internet of Things, yeah, security of
Right.
things.
Yeah, and it was great. So yeah, we're definitely at Xively, security is a massive focus for us. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely
So,
something to talk about.
yeah, well, and next Security of Things is coming up in June, so we hope to see you guys there as well.
There's a nice plug.
Since you mentioned it. So we were talking about, like, how do we talk about this? What's a good entree into talking about kind of product design and product resilience and Internet of Things? And we both were sort of like, well, CES just happened, right? The Consumer Electronics Show. So I'd be interested in kind of what your take on CES was this year, and what trends or themes you saw just in, I don't think you were there, but just like me, reading your news feed and picking stories out of it.
Yeah.
What kind of struck your attention, got your attention?
Right. So we actually did have a couple folks over at CES from Xively, and I kind of got the condensed version of what they thought of how it went, and it seemed to be pretty much in line with what my Twitter feed was saying. I was following a lot of it, and there seemed to be a lot of very similar themes. Mainly that the big joke was it's not the Consumer Electronics Show this year; it's the Connected Electronics Show. So it showed the fact that in the past couple years, the IoT was kind of a novelty, but now I think it's shown that this year, and we saw this at Dreamforce as well, that the IoT has kind of grown up, and it's not just something that you might want to do; it's become a competitive necessity for a lot of these companies to stay ahead and to be competitive. All these kind of traditional kind of manufacturers and product people who've gone without having anything technological for dozens, hundreds of years now are being thrust into the technology sphere by taking their toothbrushes or whatever, for good or better or for worse, we're connecting everything. So that's kind of a big theme that I noticed.
You mentioned the. I was just going to mention the Wi-Fi toothbrush or the smart toothbrush.
Yeah.
That was from the 2013 show.
Right. Yeah.
I think there was also a fork that told you if you were overeating or something like that.
I think that was last year's. So there's always kind of a big, this year I know it was the big coffee machine that does its own thing with you put in the beans and it grinds it all for you. So some of them are interesting. Some might, like any new technology, there's going to be a weeding out of certain products and see what works. But it seems like no matter what, IoT is definitely here to stay as of this year.
And it almost seemed like in 2013 that the message was almost, there are these connected products and sort of, boy, are they stupid. There's this fork product that it's telling you it's vibrating if you're eating too much, or eating too fast. There's this, the egg tray, and and geez, this stuff is just silly. This year, I think you started to see a little bit more maturity. So to the extent that there were applications, they seem to be okay. Well, these are things that people could actually use. I know, home security, smart door locks, and environmental controls seem to be a next big category that people are very interested in.
There's actually one of the companies that's here out of Boston, Ecovent Systems. That's a big one. It's very practical, being able to open and close your vents and possibly have your temperature all be controlled by your Nest, and all the different pieces started to come together. So there's a lot of more practical focus this year on products that I think people are really going to buy. Lutron is one of our big ones, customers at Xively, and they've been getting a lot of play with their whole Casita wireless system, which is I have in my home and I love it. So these kind of more practical products are starting to get a little more focus, and it's great. It's a lot of fun.
What are some of the concerns that we all should have, I guess, as both consumers and businesses that might be investing in this technology, about the design, and security of some of these, particularly when you're talking about, home security, surveillance, door locks, and those types of things. Those are obviously high value tools for you with a big downside when they don't work.
So I think as a starting point, the door lock is a big one. I've been hearing now for it's been several years of August and some of these other companies who keep pushing back their delivery date because it's an extremely hard problem. Like when I first heard, yes, that's great, I can unlock my door with Bluetooth and it just does it. But I keep my phone in my pocket, so it's gonna unlock. Every time I walk by my door in my house. So there's a lot of real hairy issues that you have to deal with, and especially. We were talking, you asked what another big theme I noticed in the Twitter feed, but security was massive. Lots of people worried now that it's hitting a consumer kind of focus. Security has been a big issue in the internet. Now I think the Internet of Things focus, now that it's going to be in our home in a much more prevalent way, the stakes are higher. This is your physical stuff. This is your actual life now, just not just something like documents that your email. It's actually your house, your home, where you live, your family. So the stakes get a lot higher with the security concerns, and these are something, especially I was saying these older companies, these manufacturers haven't had to deal with before the connected era. But now that people's data and ability to authenticate and access this kind of connected products, it's something they're going to have to think about in a far more robust way than I think they're used to dealing with.
It's funny because when I heard, when I hear Bluetooth door lock, I'm sort of like, why? Because when you think about your steel door lock, your Schlage or Yale door lock, it isn't connected, but it's a pretty amazing device. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm in my mid-40s. I've been using deadbolt locks my whole life, and they've never not worked.
Exactly.
And so, with anytime you add connectivity to a device or Bluetooth, all of a sudden there are very different tolerances, right? I mean, we're actually used to Bluetooth not working all the time.
Right. Yes.
And if you've ever tried to kind of pair to something, right, that it's finicky.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's, to your point, that's one of the issues, is we have different expectations around these devices that we've been using for years, whether those are automobiles or home appliances or door locks, that are different, I think, than the expectations we have for the personal consumer electronics that we use, whether those are, our laptops or mobile phones and so on.
Right. And I mean, it's like, the light bulb or, light switches have worked pretty well, so if build something,
they always work.
If you're going to build something that is a connected switch, it has to work as well, if not better, than what we already have. Right. And when you have that latency when you flick on a light, it has to go automatically, or else people aren't going to want to buy it. So there's a very practical consumer concern, but as well as you don't want a hacker going in and turning your lights on and off. Then suddenly you can't access any of your lights.
Right.
It's like I said, the stakes are definitely higher.
Right. And I should note here, as we're going along, there's a QA button on the left-hand side of your screen, and if you click on that, you can pose questions to Sean and myself, and at the end of the Hangout, we'll take time to answer those questions for you. So use that QA button over on the left. Ask questions. If you've got questions about IoT products, if you're designing an IoT product, if you're scoping out whether it's components, hardware, software, platforms in which to create an IoT product or service, let us know. We'll be happy to field your questions. And also, if you've got questions around IoT and emerging IoT issues, the Consumer Electronics Show, we'll also answer those as well. So use that QA feature. Sean, one of the things that we did see this year was Edith Ramirez, the chairwoman of the Federal Trade Commission, came to CES and gave a really, I thought, interesting and substantive speech to, I think, a packed audience there, saying, in essence, you guys have to get your act together and make sure that you are not damaging the, hurting the privacy or security of consumers as you're bringing these products to market. You need to have security be part of the design process.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really nice to see, the FTC kind of getting involved and showing that they're really paying attention to this. It's definitely on their radar. In fact, I just read today there is a new congressional IoT caucus, so even Congress is getting involved. And I know
yeah.
like to make fun of them for calling the internet a bunch of tubes, but
yeah.
somewhere. So yeah, I thought it was really nice to see that starting to address privacy in the IoT. It's definitely an issue that it's not that much different than what we've already been dealing with on the internet as far as privacy issues with how is our data being used. Whether it's
right.
the IoT or just internet, it's just more data that companies now have access to for each of their consumers and their users. And I still don't think it's solved for the internet, and I think it's going to get even worse with the Internet of Things. And I really believe that there has to be much more done about being much more transparent about what data is being used and how it's being used by companies in the future.
Sure. I mean, I guess what ability does the FTC, I mean, you LogMeIn and Xively are kind of in this space. Yep. You're dealing with companies who are coming to market or at least approaching you with ideas that are related to IoT, yep. looking for your help in that. How big of an issue is security privacy? How big of an issue is, we could end up with an FTC fine if we don't do this right? I mean, is there palpable fear out there, or is it more sort of, yeah, we want to do the right thing?
I think companies tend to want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Especially especially the more like known brands, they're very aware. It's more kind of the Kickstarter campaigns and these kind of
right.
people that you should be a little more, when you take an app and you put it on your phone and it says it's free, it's not free. Your
right.
data is the price. So right. the same thing's going to be with products that are offering, massive discounts to get on their product. If you have a wearable that's free, you're probably paying because they're giving the data to somebody. It's good. It kind of correlates in that way. As far as what we've seen with our customers, they are definitely worried about security. It's a primary question. Anytime we have a new customer, they ask us a million different security questions, which inevitably turns into a privacy issue.
Yeah.
One thing that we really try to focus on in the Xively platform that we have is the idea of identity. I think identity and access is at the heart of a lot of this
yeah.
Kind of security and privacy issue, because suddenly it's not just you that's interacting with a product. It's, let's take again the Lutron example. You have installers, you have third-party vendors, you have, let's say it's in a commercial space. You have to worry about all what building manager has access to what things, the amount of access that they have. All this has to be kind of dealt with in a nice way.
Right.
So it's not just privacy, but it's also access and identity.
Right. So let's just drill down on that. What are the things that that vendors get wrong or need to sort of often need help with, assistance with? Yeah. Managing identity with these connected products. Talk to me about some of the challenges that you've seen companies run into.
Well, we've seen multiple times of customers coming to us and saying we tried it on our own, but we weren't able to do it. Building when it comes to connectivity in the IoT, there are really good open protocols, MQTT and
right.
All these different kind of protocols are very easy to do out of the box, but they're really good for doing a test, a prototype, not for a scalable solution that you can put out on the market.
Right.
We realized that here within Xively, the product teams, they started, with the MQTT PAHO client like everybody else, but we realized once you try to actually scale it and it doesn't handle the kind of user identity that you need on top of that connectivity. So what we have noticed is that customers are not ready to handle that. It's not their focus. It's not what they're good at. You know, if they're an air conditioning manufacturer, they're really good at making air conditioners. They're not really good at handling identity, because they've basically, once it leaves on a truck, you know, the supply chain starts rolling, and you don't have to deal with it anymore. It's like, it's in the hands of Target or whoever you know, purchases so many units. Now it's a full the feedback loop is closed. So now the manufacturer has complete insight into the entire product, and now they have a liability to their customers that they didn't have before. So what we try to do is help them think of best practices for managing these relationships with, you know, the customers and all the different people who are involved now in this larger IoT ecosystem that they may not have thought about.
Right. It's interesting. It seems like there are different kind of, we talk about Internet of Things like it's monolithic, like it's one thing, but there are all different kind of groups who are eyeing this space or who are entering into this space. There are the very established companies, you know, the GEs and Whirlpools and you know, big appliance and hardware makers, industrial firms, right, who are adding, you know, intelligence, connectivity, real-time monitoring to their existing products. And then, like you said, there's the sort of grassroots of Indiegogo and Kickstarter, which might just be a couple, you know, people with a good idea and some crowdfunding to support it.
Right.
Do you see, is there a difference in the sophistication or awareness of, you know, the security, privacy, risk issues that go along with this, depending on whether they're established firms or whether they're these, you know, these kind of crowdfunded startups? In other words, you see some of the big firms making some of the same mistakes that the crowdfunding startups make?
Absolutely, and I think it's mainly because they're highly non-technical product companies that now have to be technical. So I think it's not just a Kickstarter versus, you know, it's not a startup versus a established company problem, although that can often be the case, but it's also a problem of old guard versus, you know, new guard. It's a mixture of, you know, software and tech companies versus, you know, old lawnmower manufacturers. You know, Toro has never had to deal with this. And unlikely they'll be connecting. I don't know. I guarantee, you know, they will be in a couple years. Who knows? So that's kind of where I see the divide. It happens across everybody.
Honestly, if my lawnmower could tell me that, like, the blade needed to be sharpened, you know, that would be useful to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I always wonder, and it would be good if it could just diagnose that on its own and tell me. Unfortunately, it's not so good if, you know, they're also collecting my email and credit card number and not protecting it. My sense is that, I mean, one of the big problems, obviously, is, and we see this even in, like, industrial control and critical infrastructure, that you have vendors who are used to dealing with, you know, air-gap networks or not, you know, internet-connected systems, who are adding that connectivity but don't really fully understand the risks that go along with it. So, let's have a, you know, web-based remote management interface for all of our substations, and that way we can, you know, make changes and not have to send somebody out there on foot. Not really understanding, but that also opens the door to someone anywhere in the world to kind of get into your substation electronically. And then you'll see sort of, you know, just bad hygiene, you know, backdoor accounts, administrative accounts, you know, hard-coded passwords and things like that. How willing, or I guess, you know, if you're deploying one of these products, is it worthwhile trying to kind of do it all yourself, or is it better to look out there and kind of take a best-of-breed approach, look for providers to kind of help you with the components of making a connected product and a connected product ecosystem?
Right. Yeah. Well, given what Xively does, we're obviously going to say, it's the latter. But
Yeah.
there's a good reason for that. Building it on your own, there's a lot of moving parts,
Right.
and so it's one of those things. Several people at our office have made the analogy of Intel Inside, where you have this idea that you used to buy a computer, if you know what's the guts under the hood, is something you can trust. You know that Intel is a good brand, so you're willing to purchase that product. In the same, we may not have a Xively Inside, but there needs to be something, a way that consumers who, when they purchase a product, have some level of assurance that their security and privacy concerns are being addressed by what that product manufacturer is putting under the hood.
Right.
And likely, unless you're a Samsung or a GE or some of these behemoth, companies that have the resources to, from scratch, build an entire IoT platform, with all these kind of concerns, connectivity, management, privacy, identity access, provisioning, all the sort of things you have to worry about with a typical IoT solution, then you're not going to be able to do it and keep that updated over time. That's the other thing.
Right.
I think you and I talked about, the refrigerator. They were using an Android tablet, right, or Android underneath for the system.
Right.
Yeah, I'll let you kind of pitch it, but I thought that was interesting.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean that was a CES story. There were a number of them about connected kitchen appliances because it is a big area of interest. And yeah, one of the products that I saw highlighted was a range, an oven that had a flat screen, kind of touchscreen interface on it, and it was running Android. That was the the center brains of this were Android. My question to you, and I guess my question to the company, if they were here, would be, ovens have a lifespan of a decade or more, maybe much more.
Right.
And yet we saw this week that Android, that Google really doesn't plan on supporting any version of Android out more than about 18 or 24 months, really just until the next major release comes along. It's open source. They treat it like an open source product. So you're expected to upgrade to the latest version of Android.
That's right.
How do you do that if it's an oven? And I guess, are the manufacturers themselves aware of the need, to continue maintaining and servicing
right,
the software that's running on their devices?
So I would say in the past, no. But I think we do a lot of we try to really get out the fact that is a problem, and it's something we address frequently. And that's why we often say, what you can build it or buy it, but we strongly recommend using an IoT platform to handle this for you, because one thing that for Xively, we would make it easy so that you would be able to upgrade that firmware, everything, and push it back and forth between the device, the agent, and the user, and as well as into the cloud, and it would automatically handle that automatically.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about these patch errors and all these kind of legacy issues. You can handle it, but in order to do that, you have to be thinking about the design up front.
Right.
And that's something that I still don't think is there.
Right.
People get excited to connect something, and once they kind of have a prototype, they start going from there and don't backtrack to thinking about the bigger, more scalable issues that they have to handle, like how do you service and support these things years out.
Yeah, and also how do you do that securely? So not only do it right, but if you're going to have updates, are they signed updates? So nobody is sending a malicious update out to your oven. Obviously, you can imagine ways that could be very problematic.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, does LogMe and Xively, you personally, are there advantages to the various platforms that are out there? Android versus some of the other software platforms that are out there. Is there an advantage to going with open source as opposed to building your own?
Right. So I think it depends on what the platform is and where it is. As far as Android versus iOS, or, Objective-C, these sort of things. I think the real issue is more, you have the different pieces of the puzzle, right? So, you have your connected lights, and you'll have an iPhone app or an Android app.
Yeah.
Then you'll have a web kind of console that, let's say, Lutron is managing in the back end to see how many people are online, offline.
Right.
Then you also have the the actual board. They might have I think they have a Texas Instrument board underneath the hood in the smart hub in the house. So those are the different kind of pieces that you have. And I think what really matters is not really what platform, and if it's for us it doesn't matter. I think you're going to see kind of two things. You're going to have a LAN and a WAN kind of approach. So Lutron right now is using us to escape into the cloud, right?
Right.
So what matters, I think, is picking someone who can do that. You can, like we were talking about, you can build it yourself, or do it with somebody who has a core competency in that. That's what we bring as LogMeIn, is that's our bread and butter. That's what we do best. You focus on building dimmer switches.
Right.
Whereas the other kind of side is picking what you want to use for in the LAN network. So that's where I think the open source kind of wars are happening. We saw it at CES. Is it going to be people are going to be using Thread? Are they using HomeKit? Are they using the Nest developer program? And I think this is more where the issues of open source kind of options are definitely going to be more palatable. Also, Lutron themselves could open up an API that is more cloud-based if they decided to open that up. So that's another avenue where it can be open, the data.
And their name again and the URL if people wanted to check them out. What is that?
For Lutron?
Yeah.
I think you can just go to Lutron, LUTRON.com.
Right.
Or you can I think you can buy it in even Home Depot now.
Okay.
But they've been shown as a big success story here early on in the IoT, kind of like a Nest.
Right. And I keep meaning to mention, and I keep forgetting because I'm enjoying talking to Sean. But there is a QA app. There is a QA feature here on the left-hand side. If you want to click that QA button and pose a question to Sean and/or myself, we will answer it. We'll be going to questions in a few minutes. So use that. If you got questions, we're happy to answer them or try to answer them and take advantage of that. So one issue I think that we're going to see a lot of, and we saw it this year with Heartbleed, right, and Shell Shock, is the reliance of so many of these IoT vendors on open source products, the products of open source projects. Some of them, like OpenSSL, very well established and presumed to be secure, and yet we saw with Heartbleed, obviously, that there are issues with these. And then there are so many other, right, smaller, less well-maintained, less well-scrutinized open source pieces out there. How, what's your advice to companies who are saying, I can grab this open source thing and drop it in, it's going to save me months of trying to develop it myself, but I don't really know about the quality of the code. I don't know if it's been audited, I don't know how secure it is, and I don't want to get bitten by something like Heartbleed. Yeah,
it's a tough issue. I was actually really shocked to hear that OpenSSL had issues. You just so for someone who codes,
or Bash. How about Bash? Right?
Or Bash. That's even worse. Especially when it comes to the IoT, almost every embedded device runs Linux. And so you have this Linux board, and Bash, and you have all these kind of base pieces of these boards that are compromisable, and it's actually pretty shocking. So I think there's some interesting ways around it. I think one interesting thing I saw at CES was Bitfender. Did you hear about them?
Yes, yeah. Pretty established security company, and they came out with a kind of IoT-focused product. Yeah.
Right.
Talk about it.
So that's an interesting way to deal. It kind of takes a little bit of the onus off the manufacturer in a bad way.
Right.
So where it makes them lazy. Where if as long as what's going in and out of the network from the home, you don't have to deal with it because this Bitdefender box will handle it. However, I do not recommend that. I think really what you want to do is make sure you have two kind of levels of interception. This box, Bitdefender box, is a really cool first point, but you also need to deal with access in and out because you're not always going to go through the router. So you need to find other ways to kind of protect yourself. So I think one way around that is to, again, use somebody who's doing this, whose core competency is to actually handle the provisioning and the access and authentication.
What do you recommend, or log me in terms of auditing and doing assessments of both the code that you create? Obviously, you assume that would be part of the development process or development cycle, but also just the other components that you might be using, whether those are again, open source components, or in fact, LogMeIn itself, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to have security tests in place, and when we speak with our customers, we often give them best practices for what things to look out for, as far as both on the board, in the wire, and in the cloud. So basically, kind of, if you can secure things from those, especially those three kind of target areas, you can really begin to close up as many holes as possible. So a big area of concern is on the board itself. As we just saw, bash is not secure. You can't trust that every time. So you have to think about ways to secure what's going in and out. Also, physical tampering of the device.
Sure.
Now that we're dealing not just with the cloud or software, you're talking about an actual physical product that could be possibly tampered with.
Right.
How do you handle someone that's physically going into the device that may not be authenticated? There's that all the way up to in the wire. This is something that we've had to deal with several customers who are on networks that don't allow anything over something other than port 80. So how do you actually do something secure? How do you send secure messaging across a tunnel, with a message bus that is, transmitting secure data? It's extremely difficult, and this is something that a lot of customers aren't going to figure out on their own. It's taken our developers, months to figure out a secure way to do this that won't get you in trouble. And then also, once you hit the web, you have to deal with, we all know about the target, case, and how do you deal with your third-party vendors and who has access. Right. So you have to also handle in the cloud who has authentication. Again, I mentioned it earlier, identity. Who has the identity access, across all the different players in the IoT kind of ecosystem that you've built.
Sure. I mean, there's supply chain issues as well. I know Security Ledger has written about, kind of certified pre-owned hardware coming from, Asia, Eastern Europe that's been, you've got components in there that are having viruses loaded on them at the, or malware usually loaded on them at the manufacturing site, or by way of a third-party downstream contractor or supplier. So that's another issue. Again, we're talking not just about software here, but software and hardware that I would imagine companies need to be attentive to. I wonder if it then comes back to that issue you raised about brand. We'll buy from companies that we know have the resources to vet their supply chain and not end up in a situation like this versus a lower cost provider.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? And there was some news today or yesterday rather about a new kind of open IoT framework from the Open Internet Connect group. There was some news also at CES about various and competing standards, whether it's Google Thread or Apple HomeKit. I mean, there are so many.
Right.
For folks on the line who are contemplating or are actively pursuing developing an IoT product, looking at this kind of alphabet soup of different Internet of Things standards, anything useful there? Anything they should be paying attention to? Are you prepared to bet on one of these horses?
Well, what's nice about Xively is we're kind of protocol agnostic, which is great. A lot of the fights over protocol wars are much more about land-based communication. Since we are a more cloud-based solution that helps you connect with your business systems and all the other data you have across your organization, we're much more focused on the interaction between a specific manufacturer and their customer,
right.
As well as the people interacting with it. However, when it comes to the land-based kind of Nest, Alljoin is doing a lot in this space, and Thread.
Yes, right.
There's 3 or 4 big players now, and there will likely be more. But honestly, I think it's difficult for a manufacturer today because they're likely going to have to support multiple protocols until people decide. It's the Betamax VHS story all over.
Times 100, right? Because that was just 2 vendors, right?
I do think we're seeing several though that are going to be prominent. I definitely think Alljoin. I mean, this is just my personal opinion, but I'm seeing a lot with Alljoin and Thread being, as well as Nest and HomeKit. Those seem to be the big ones.
Right, right. Although I saw some article, the headline of which is how many standards, how many Internet of Things standards are too much, and I was like, well, I think 2 is too much actually if you're talking about standards, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It's kind of, it implies that there's just one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and Alljoin is also the Linux Foundation and Open Internet Connect, and
right.
You're right. They have some very big backers, and they're doing this all in the context of open source, which you would think would encourage adoption.
Absolutely.
But there are big players, right? I mean, Google, Thread, Apple, and HomeKit. These are huge technology companies with a big footprint. Are we going to end up in a sort of balkanized environment where, most, sort of, it's Windows and Mac again, and we've got sort of islands of applications and islands of users, or will there be consensus at some point?
Honestly, I'm not optimistic in there being just one. I would love it if there was. I'm a big fan of Alljoin. I like Thread as well, but I think in the end, the big guys will force things into some dichotomies, which, it's fine. And there's also different purposes for different protocols.
Right.
Some might be better for specific industries, right? Even in the internet, we have FTP, we have, HTTP, so there's not necessarily one standard, even though there kind of mostly is. There's still ways to access different kinds of information different ways. So I think we're going to see that with the IoT as well, is my guess.
So we've got a couple questions that have been posed. I'm going to take the first one, which is from Glenn. He asks, can you both talk about security-related issues you've seen in your experience so that we can learn from what's already been done or tried, along with maybe how that was resolved? Okay. You first.
Great. Yeah, I think.
So for you, obviously, if you can come up with something sort of maybe that's come up in your work there at LogMeIn.
I'm trying to think of something related directly to us. I think when it comes to security, it's something that we haven't thankfully had to deal with because we've really tried to tackle that. But I think where we have dealt with it is people coming to us for help once they already had issues. I think the reason we haven't had to deal with it is because we kind of took the big picture approach before we started designing, and really tried to tackle a lot of the issues. And that's not to say that we're not going to have problems, but we definitely have a good security team here that, because LogMeIn has already a ton of other products like Join Me and Rescue, that are already doing a lot of security, that when you're VPNing into a remote accessing another computer that you have to deal with. So we've dealt with a lot of the security issues already. So I know that sounds like I'm not really answering the question, but thankfully it hasn't been an issue. I think
it's pretty much a cop out there. But,
it was a cop out. but I think you definitely, I think from the industry, have a lot more experience.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I have more experience. I will say, before I became, journalist, industry analyst guy, I did work in the software industry, and I worked for software and technology companies, large and small. So I've been part of product development teams, and I, like you, have seen the dynamic that exists within product teams, which is, at the end of the day, you're in business to sell your product, and so whatever you can do that is going to make that job easier for your sales force is you're going to try and do. And so, I certainly have been in the room when, the head of sales is saying, listen, if we can get this feature in, then we're going to close this deal, and that's going to make our quarter. And that dynamic exists today just as much as when I was doing it. And so I know that that's, in essence, how many times security problems or code gets out there that hasn't been fully vetted, code gets out there that maybe hasn't fully thought through security issues. So I'll say that. The other answer I would have is that, I've done a lot of writing about areas like security around industrial control systems and SCADA systems. Yeah. And I think that is a cautionary tale for the Internet of Things, because I think what you've had there is organizations that have introduced connectivity to existing infrastructure without fully weighing the risks and without changing their mindset from who would want to attack us. We make refrigerators, or we are a electric utility, to we are going to be attacked. There are people out there who are going to attack us. This is something that I think enterprises have understood for a long time because they've been attacked constantly. But some of these other providers, not so much. And so I think that would be the other thing that I would say.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, that reminds me. One thing we tried to we looked at a lot of oil and gas companies, and as well as healthcare, and a lot of these companies, when we talked in discussions with possibly being customers, compliance is a massive issue.
Yes,
that we're dealing with. So we actually weren't able to take on some of these projects because the security-related issues that they have are something that can't be addressed.
Right.
Even our solutions. There's a lot of government-related issues and that sort of thing.
Right. And I mean, I think we've seen a lot of reports out that show that certainly the government and government contractors are often not getting it right.
Right.
So there's both a high bar, and a lot of people are tripping on it, are not clearing it. So next question. This is from Nicola. Is there a better protocol than OAuth for authorizing connected devices? Okay. OAuth, open authentication, pretty common.
Yep.
And commonly used. Anything better than that for doing authentication of devices to networks?
So I think there's kind of a couple ways to look at this. So OAuth is excellent, but OAuth tends to be good for connecting your mobile app to the cloud. That's not how you would actually connect the device to the cloud. So it's a big separation. So OAuth is really, I think, good for a customer for a company that wants to log data information and collect a username and password for their app to get into a system. But that's just the beginning. So once they OAuth in, that's just credential information for the company to put in their backend, say Salesforce or something. The next step is how do you authenticate the mobile device to the cloud, then to the connected product itself. And that's where you would use something like Xively, which handles the identity and access and authentication, the tokens, the permissioning. So there's definitely much, much, much better stuff out there than OAuth for that piece. OAuth is really good for identifying a person to get into a system, but not for relaying the communications. So that's a big difference, and I think it's important for people. It's a common thing that we actually have heard several times. So it's a level of education that I think people haven't quite understood as developers yet.
Is it kind of the people are sort of looking at devices like their apps as
Exactly.
opposed to understanding that there's kind of a different level of a different layer of sophistication that's going on?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Question from Janice: what are the key exposure risks that we should be concerned about when designing a connected product? So what's gonna get you what's gonna get your product on the nightly news in a bad way?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the things we've kind of been discussing here. You know, making sure that you handle on the device, on the wire, and then in the cloud. You know, if you're not running a battery of tests to test at each of those levels, there's a good chance someone's going to find you, because hackers now are actively seeking out connected products. And if you haven't thought about how to connect, or secure, you know, both from the network, on the device, and in the cloud, as well as not just the cloud, but the app. So there's a lot of different pieces that you have to worry about securing. And something like Xively, what's nice, again, is that we handle every single device, user, or thing that is getting information to and from a connected product, whether it's your backend, you know, SAP or Salesforce, or a third-party installer that has an app to connect into that product. Each one of them has to have credentials that are passed back and forth and are checked in a trust engine. So you have to say, okay, do I have access to this? Yes, 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 no. So it'll go through, and then it'll adapt and make sure that they can only access what they're given access to based on their identity.
So last question, and then we can just do a quick wrap up. You know, it strikes me, we've been talking about CES and the trends. You obviously have a interesting perspective on the space just by working at LogMeIn and Xively, a company that is a service provider to IoT companies. I'd be interested in kind of what you see as the big trends right now and in 2015, the types of things that you're seeing customers bring to you, both in terms of product problems to solve, and, you know, product ideas or services ideas that are gaining traction.
Right. So a really big thing, you know, we've been talking, you know, constantly to customers this year, and really one of the big things we've realized is there's something that's kind of emerging that's called product relationship management, and that's kind of the big thrust of 2015.
Okay, what is that?
So that's a great question. So kind of the idea between product relationship management is that you have all this data, and you have to realize, how do you handle the communication between all the different people, the complex relationships that are involved with all the different things that we mentioned, and how do you manage it all from both connecting the device to managing the users, the product owners, the teams that are creating and managing the products once they've gone online, but also engaging with the customer themselves. So there's a whole new, like you were bringing up service and support. One of the big things about product relationship management we see is engagement with the customer in brand new ways. So this includes, you know, the ability to remotely access and support a product. You know, that's kind of LogMeIn's bread and butter, you know, with things like Rescue, where we've been doing this for years. So now it'll be Rescue on steroids. You know, it's kind of like Rescue for any connected thing. So that's kind of what we're seeing is customers now that are offering connected solutions, their big next step is like, okay, we're connected. What now? You know, and we think relating with their customer and the product that they bought is the next big step in 2015.
Right, because with connected products, obviously you sell the product, which is great. Maybe you're getting some subscription revenue, but that also means that there's a lot incumbent on you as a service provider
Yes,
to
exactly.
maintain quality of service, right?
That's right.
24/7, 365.
And that didn't exist,
Right.
for these companies before they were connected. So
Yeah.
they're going to have to bulk up their support in a big way. And unless they're not ready for it, it's going to be difficult.
Okay, really interesting point. Okay, so just in conclusion, we're really at the end of our time here, but just some of the kind of high-level takeaways that folks should leave with, and maybe we can kind of take turns. I would say one is, that Internet of Things is here to stay. Internet of Things is in a substantial trend. It's not a flash in the pan. And that it is going to be impacting you in both your homes and your workplace. If it isn't already, it's going to be certainly within the next year or two, and to be cognizant of it. But that it also brings along with it new challenges.
Yeah, I think that's a great wrap up. So I would just add, that the things to look for, when you're starting to create these products, is to really take security seriously. Don't make it an afterthought when you're building these products, and really, start to think through all the real issues that you're going to have to build before you start building it, and that's a key issue. And then, actually, I just want to plug next Thursday, Paul will be doing a webinar with our head of products here at Xively, and they will be talking on the securing the Internet of Things, a guide to designing resilient products for the IoT.
Right.
That's Thursday, January 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Right, so we're going to drill down a little bit more actually into the weeds of issues that come up during design and development, deployment of IoT products, and how to. My big theme this year, I think, is resilience, because I think that's going to be a really I think just in the security space, it's becoming an increasingly important topic, which is not just make stuff that doesn't tip over, but make stuff that can actually stand up to what the world is going to throw at it, and continue functioning, kind of mission continuity. So I mean, I think that's a really important issue, I think, with IoT, and we're going to be talking about, in more detail really about how to do that as a development organization.
Absolutely, that sounds great.
Great. Hey, Sean, I wanted to just thank you so much for joining us. It was a great discussion. And this will be available online after we're done. So if you're not here, then you're not here. But you can watch it. If you missed it, you can watch it. Sean Lorenz from Xively and LogMeIn, thanks so much for talking to us at Security Ledger about CES and Internet of Things.
Thank you, Paul. It was great. Had fun.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
All right. Bye.